But Comey is the topic of the week, I would say. I think the Trump campaigns, or the Trump campaign's relationship or no relationship with Russia, and that whole administration's, that whole mess.
And also we're going to have to bring her back because she is on the House Oversight Committee, and they're going to have a lot to say and a lot involved in terms of making sure that we get to the bottom of what was happening. And Clay, I got to say, even if, let's say the scenario happens that Trump somehow is removed, unlikely, remote, I'm still winning because I like Mike Pence too. Mike Pence, I'm a big fan. Mike Pence's nephew has come to our bold birthday party. I'm a big fan. So you know what?
I'm sorry.
I'm winning, and I won't even get sick of winning. But yes,
let's bring in our guests so you'll stop dropping names a little bit.
No,
let's drop some other names. Psychologist Chloe Carmichael is back with us, and so is Russia columnist whose name I always mispronounce, Maria Snegovaya.
Hello.
Did I do okay, though?
Perfectly.
Did I do it perfectly?
You did it perfectly. And I have to give congratulations to Maria because she just got her green card.
Thank you.
Oh, yes. Lots of stuff going on in the news right now. Obviously, with regard to Russia, let's just start with a blanket question. You know, how you saw yesterday's testimony, and if you believe it will have any effect at all, Chloe.
Sure. Well, thanks again for having me back. It's great to be here with you. I really admired, first of all, Comey for going on and I think really trying to offer as accurate a recollection as he possibly could. So I think that was actually great. And he confirmed things that people on both sides of the aisle had doubted. So my hope is that it might actually unify us.
Oh, isn't that wonderful? Wouldn't that be great?
Well, and I think also the committee was run very professionally too. I thought both the Democrats and the Republicans had
mad props to North Carolina
The fact
Senator
that there
Burr.
was a hearing, I think, is great. The fact that he was brought into a public place where he could air out whatever it was that he had to say, I think speaks really well of our country.
Maria?
From a Russian perspective, it's really remarkable to see the ex-head of the security service to be so openly critical of the current head of the government, given that in Russia, the head of security is actually head of the state altogether. So for us, it's a little unusual, and of course, it's definitely a manifestation of the strength of the U.S. democracy. On the more substantive matters, I do not think we've seen any smoking gun, and that was the case. It's essentially, if you talk to people in D.C., this is basically what they will tell you. There's a lot of smoke, but there is no substantive evidence yet, or we don't know for how long. So in this sense, it has been just a continuation of the same. I do not, unfortunately, think this is going to bring Democrats and Republicans together. I think that polarization is increasing. And how do you see that? You see that from the polls, remarkably, regarding how the Republicans and Democrats perceive Russia. It's interesting, but the Republicans actually keep improving their attitudes towards Russia over the recent polls. It's right now up to 30 and 40% of the Republican Americans who actually suggest that there is possibility of establish friendly relationship with Russia despite everything that's going on, unlike the Dems.
Is that a tribal reaction, though, do you think? Do you think that's a tribal reaction of Republicans who want to support Donald Trump and therefore want to believe or say, at least, that there is not an issue with Russia, that we shouldn't or don't have an issue with Russia?
Certainly, partisanship play a big role in all that story, and it's been like that before. We also know that during the electoral period as well. But I do believe there's also a role for the media to play. In this sense, I think you guys are doing a great job in trying to provide this mixed coverage. But essentially, if you watch Fox News, you will perceive really different reality, and that's no news from when you read the New York Times.
I want to show a poll that we have from our readers, because we polled our readers on Twitter, or our viewers. What do you guys think about what happened with Comey? And Chloe, I don't think that the consensus among our viewers is that they would make that much of a difference. So 78 to 22%, most people said it did not change their opinion of the Russia investigation. I think it almost became and Chloe, you're a psychologist, was the testimony sort of almost like an ink blot where people see what they want, kind of like what Clay and I do with our rosy-colored glasses? Do people see what and project what they want to hear from Comey?
I think that people do that in general. There's something called a confirmation bias in psychology, which is that once we have our minds made up about a person or an issue, we tend to see everything through a lens of confirming what it is that we already believed.
Right. Well, there would certainly be. I think it's important to note that usually our viewers tend to skew left, and at least in the way they see things. We've certainly got a great, strong base of viewers who skew to the right, but our polls tend to skew left. To me, I would argue that if you want to look at that question through the lens of did this change your opinion about the Russia investigation in the sense that, oh, Trump's in so much more trouble, then that's actually a good thing, I think, for the Trump administration to see that people said no, it didn't change their opinion, because I think a lot of Democrats went into it, at least people who had that confirmation bias of, oh, he's bad, he's done something wrong, looking for Comey to say something that would absolutely, and I've had some rose-colored glasses segments of my own in the last 24 hours with friends who listened to him say lines like, and mine, by the way, had we gotten to it, was listening to Comey say things like he didn't say that he didn't direct me to stop the investigation, but it was very clear to me that he was. A lot of Democrats saw that as, oh, well, that's our smoking gun. But it wasn't to me. What is a smoking gun? I mean, what if Democrats want to find something, what do they need to find? What is it that is going to do it?
Well, a lot of the debate during the discussion was about what exactly Trump said to Comey, right? He said, I'm hoping you maybe drop the investigation against Flynn. That is not enough for the obstruction of justice, apparently, based on the yesterday's conclusion. That's how it held. The real proof or the real problem would be for Trump, if the FBI was to discover, for example, some kind of evidence of collusion with the Russians. We don't know that yet either. We know that Roger Stone communicated with the Goods Affair, the Russia link hacker, but we don't know exactly what they discussed and how that proceeded. So something more substantive that would be allow the investigation to really make that claim. But so far, we just don't have it.
Well, and Trump certainly feels vindicated. We got his tweet as well, talking, he just tweeted out this morning. Let's throw that up on screen. Just Trump's rosy-colored glasses listening to the Comey hearing. He said, despite so many false statements and lies, total and complete vindication. And wow, Comey is a leaker.
Which is funny to me, because he seems to focus on, no, he didn't. There weren't any lies. I mean, Comey came out and he told the truth. Nothing really changed from his testimony. Comey, I don't believe at any point ever said, no, I didn't tell the president that he was not under investigation. I found it fascinating that when Trump's attorney came out with his statement right after, the word currently was always included. Trump was currently not under investigation at the time. No one's ever said he's not under investigation now. I mean, we don't know. I want to ask you, Chloe, though, as you watched it, do you think Comey had an axe to grind? Did it seem to you as if though he was a little bitter?
Well, he was certainly, by his own self-report, confused, surprised, upset, dismayed, and defensive by the things that were said, specifically about how the FBI was in a state of disarray, and that was one of the things that he said was a lie. I think that that's a tough one, though, because, of course, he's injured. And I really admired him, though, because even though he was coming from a place of personal embarrassment, he was doing the best that he could, I think, to relay the facts. And so even though I don't necessarily mean that hearing brought us any great clarity about the Russian investigation, I do think that it brought up several things that we as a nation could hopefully come together and agree upon, or at least have a respectful dialogue. As a psychologist, I get people in my office on both sides of the aisle all the time saying, can you believe those people? Can you believe those people? And so I just really thought, as Carrie mentioned, and was also mentioned, that to have a model where we had a respectful, knowledgeable inquiry, even though, as you pointed out as well, we all can look at the same set of facts and draw very different conclusions. I just admired the fact that it was respectful and knowledgeable dialogue.
Let's pull in a few comments.
I want to ask, Maria's face changed. Maria's face changed when I asked that question, though, so I want to get your take on whether or not you thought he had an axe to grind, or you thought he was bitter, or you thought there was some sort of personal bias there.
I just think you can't win being Comey at this point. He argued, he created the whole problem with the Democrats when he, communicated that information regarding the Hillary investigation. Now he has Trump's situation, plus he has this leak situation again. I mean, I don't envy the guy.
Anybody who's hated by both sides is probably doing okay
right.
in this world,
True.
right?
Well, Joanne Lopez says tapes ought to do it.
They don't exist, Joanne.
Lordy, can you say the phrase actually?
Lordy, I hope they're tapes. That's what he said. Yeah.
We were waiting for Clay to say that.
I don't think tapes exist. I think if they existed, someone, I mean, listen, the Trump White House has been like a sieve at this point. They leak everything. So if there were tapes in existence, I think someone would have at least confirmed the existence
enough.
of them by now. I don't think they're tapes. I think it was Donald Trump just running off at the mouth like he's so talented at doing.
Well,
you know?
and I'm curious, Chloe, from a psychologist standpoint, when you saw Comey doing the testimony, did he come across as defensive?
Well, actually, I think that he has a really wonderful ability that even though he was upset, I believe that he was trying as hard as he could to put all of that aside and to just share the facts as he recalled them.
Do you think, I mean, I agree with you. I was impressed, and I think everyone on the committee was impressed. He had nothing but respect, even the most difficult. Even Jim Risch from Idaho, I think, was one of his most pointed questioners, maybe Langford from Oklahoma. Even they admitted and said to him that they had a great deal of respect for him. Do you think that the way he presented himself, the way he, at least in my view, went to great lengths to be incredibly honest? He asked if he ever called the president himself. He said no. Oh wait, actually I was asked to call the switchboard at one point, but so I did physically dial it. Do you think that type of aggressive honesty, if you want to call it that, will help his view of people?
Of course, I think it's great. The one place that I did see his emotionality, in my opinion, get a little bit of the better of him, although I agree that for the most part, he went to great lengths to be meticulously honest. Even when he was having trouble recalling a detail, he would be transparent about that, which was great. The one space, though, where I did see him slide into emotionality was saying that it was absolute lies when it was suggested that there was a disarray going on at the FBI, because as we all said earlier, he has been widely criticized and widely praised by both sides, oftentimes within the same 24-hour period. So for anyone to say that it would be a totally irrational idea for someone to suggest that there was some disarray going on, for him to label that an absolute lie, was the one time I saw him let emotionality take him away from fact.
Defensive of his people at the FBI, like.
Yeah, well, I think also he was very passionate when he was talking about Russia, and he said there's no fuzz about it, that the Russians did hack the election. And I know, Maria, you have an article, you've written a column. We can put the headline on screen because you're a columnist, looking at, do we have that headline?
Well, tell us about it, Carrie.
Well, anyway, so Maria, you say that Russian hacking may have helped Trump win, but Russians don't really care. Tell us about that.
Yeah, that's very interesting how the Russians perceive the whole situation with the hackers and Trump story. The majority of the people, and again, that's largely based on how the Russian state-owned TV channels cover the situation, they just don't buy it. They can't even believe that Russia can be so mighty and powerful. It's kind of, for some bizarre reason, they don't take pride in it. And the majority of them say, yeah, there should have been something ongoing within the U.S., and maybe the Democrats are so upset about the whole story. They are blaming the Republicans for being helped by the Russians, but in fact, we have nothing to do with that. And until recently, the whole thing was actually not on the radars of the Russian people, especially given that there are so many problems within the country. Also, the Russian state has been trying its best to create a positive image of Trump. So again, Trump may as well be one of the most popular U.S. presidents in the Russian history. At least the most popular U.S. president among all of the European countries. Right now, Trump is the most popular.
Well, actually, Maria, that's a great.
Frightening to me. To be honest with you.
That's a great segue into domestic polling. We have a couple polls we can show up about how people view here in America how Trump has been handling this. Can we throw those up, please? Let's throw these polls up. So this is from the Washington Post saying, do you think that Trump is cooperating with the investigations of Russian influence, or is he trying to interfere with the investigations? So you can see overall 56 people say that he is trying to interfere. And 17% of Republicans say he's trying to interfere, 58% of independents, 87% of Democrats. So
which reminds me how we live in such bubbles, because I'll admit, I think 56% is a low number based on my experience with people around me, and I would imagine you think it's a high number because Republicans seem to 17%. That's not very high.
Well, I have a lot of liberal friends, so.
That's a good thing.
I'm glad
If only we could
it's
fix
good
you. If only we could fix you. But to your point about the media, it's fascinating, and I encourage people, if you get a chance, to go on, I don't know the website, I watch a different way, to go on RT, Russia Today, not the American version, although that's substantially biased as well, but RT is the Russian state-owned media channel, and you can watch it online here in the U.S. It's just one of the most fascinating things to see them report on this leaking story, because they act incredulous, like you were saying. Like, what are they talking about? And these are the anchors. They sit there and they say, what are they talking about? How could they do it? And that's incredibly effective amongst the Russian population. I would certainly imagine, if that's all you're getting.
Yeah, exactly. So Russians are actually quite optimistic about the possibility of the reestablishing the relationship with the United States in the future, and that largely has to do with the fact that the Putin administration views Trump very positively until now.
How did the interview that Vladimir Putin did with Megyn Kelly this past weekend, how did that play in Russia?
Oh, they thought he made some good jokes, but in general, but in general, of course, it's been really, really disrespectful to him the way she behaved, she acted. So nobody really thought that Putin won that game. I think she did a great job, actually, as a journalist.
Interesting.
I like that. Well, we're going to get I'm going to drop another name. Megyn Kelly's husband, we're going to get on the show next week. Awesome. He has a new book out, so we'll get him for books.
Well, we'll bring you two back when we go to the Virgin Islands. How about that? Do it, because I have a feeling we'll still be talking about this Russia-Trump thing for quite a while. Maria and Chloe, thank you very much. Chloe Carmichael, Maria Snegovaya.
Thank you.
For joining us.
Let's put on a couple comments. Mickey Alessi says, it's not that Russia is powerful, it's that Putin and his underlings follow his directive.
Well, it's also, I think Maria made the point that when you are, I believe that anyone who watches one particular news network, I've always said, if you watch Fox, you're going to think one thing's true. If you watch MSNBC, you're going to think another thing's true. You really, I think there are a lot of networks that kind of try to show both sides, not as well as we do, but they do both sides. But if you watch Russia Today, and I do, and I really think you should try to just check it out once or twice, just because I imagine
I've
if you watch...
been on their programming.
Not Russia Today, not Russia America.
Okay, yeah, that one's super liberal.
If you watch that, and that's your only source of information, I talk to young people in Russia. I actually talked to a friend of mine yesterday who is from Russia, and they love Vladimir Putin. He said, quote to me, "I'm glad I'm living in his time." And I think to myself, if that's all you get, if that's the only information you get is from that media organization, it's not possible for you to be...
Well, but I also think that the U.S. did not do enough after the collapse of the Soviet Union to help them rebuild their economy from the command and control Soviet-style government. And so for them, he represents a return to that old glory. So they don't know any different. All they know is the decline that happened in the 90s. So to them, that's sort of...
He's their Trump, except for he's never going to leave. And please, Lord, let Trump leave. So
well,
let's move on to
I
non-Trump stuff.
I respected that Chloe was very positive about the testimony, and Kathleen Klein says, yes, maybe there's hope for bipartisan action on what that means for the U.S.
Well, let's hope so, Kathleen.
Yes.
Let's
Thanks, Kathleen.
really hope so. Let's do a lighter note.